What's up, Pastor Malcolm?
What up?
Well, I was ready to go live until I turned it off. I was the first one ready.
Where's my water? Did you bring it up?
Yeah. Publish. Live
Did you
video.
hear your phone?
Yeah,
That's
I'm
your
like,
phone, bro.
what does
I
that
know,
mean?
'cause
It's not your, I thought it was the charger.
Because it's my crummy phone.
Let's get you a new phone.
Hey, everybody. We'll be there. We'll be with you momentarily.
My mom. I talked to my mom today. Because
Julie
she
Cox.
said it's amazing how many times he dropped my name. My mom, shout out, had her first Popeye's chicken sandwich today.
What?
She's on right now. What's up, Julie Cox?
Today.
Today? Okay.
Greenwood, Indiana.
Come through.
Yeah. She loved it.
She's ready for that real stuff.
All right, here we go. I'm going.
Let's get it.
All right, you sit down and then I'll. It's pretty good.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we wait on Mark Cox to get up here, that ring light is really bright. Every week, I'm surprised at how bright it is. Welcome to another edition of What's Up
Wednesday.
That's the best you got?
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone's a little crooked.
It is crooked. To all of you out there, to the tens of you that watch weekly, including but not limited to our mothers, thank you for tuning in yet again. Mark's mom tuned in quicker than my mom, but that's kind of the story of her life. Mom will watch this about this time next week. Love you, Pamela. Her name's Pamela. What'd you say her name was?
Debbie.
Debbie. It is not Debbie Scott. Julie Cox is on. If you haven't noticed, we have a very special guest with us on today's edition of What's Up Wednesday. Give it up for Pastor Malcolm Marshall. Yes. Before we jump into why he is here today and kind of our main topics for the day, we want to remind everyone, if you have not saved a seat yet for this Sunday, please do so soon. I believe we're already half full.
We are.
Half full for this upcoming Sunday. You can check out all of our social media accounts and tune into HoustonsFirst.org to see how you can save your seat for one of 5 services. This past Sunday, reunion weekend, I think it was awesome. What do you guys think?
Strong.
Incredible.
I mean, it was really cool to see people. I know a lot of you, some of you weren't quite comfortable coming yet, but that is okay. We're still going to have our online services as well. And once you feel, for you and your family that you're ready to join, we will be here welcoming you with open arms. Can't wait to see everyone.
But we won't hug.
We won't hug.
Open arms, but no hugs.
That's a good call. It's going to be the, go ahead and go watch our post-quarantine church-appropriate handshakes.
Yep.
And we've actually edited this video to where we're actually all 10 feet apart. It just looks like we're right next to each other. We don't have a budget like that. Kidding. Anyway, so if you have tuned in to any editions of What's Up Wednesday, you know that it's basically become how uncomfortable can Tyler make Mark feel?
Yep.
And I mean, last week we decided that you're partial Texan. The week before, we cut your hair.
3/4 Texan.
3/4 Texan. We cut your hair. But we thought this week it would be appropriate. One of the titles. I mean, one of the what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
The mission statement.
Our mission statement?
No, that's the next one down.
Vision?
Vision is to be a relevant biblical community. Man, we're live.
We're live.
Okay? How many times have we practiced that? And I still couldn't remember the vision. We strive to be a relevant biblical community. And as we were talking as a team, we realized that part of being relevant is discussing topics that are, relevant to today's society. And unless you have been somewhere with not internet access and in the middle of the woods, obviously, I'm sure all of you have seen in the last few days and weeks, in the news, a lot of talk about the unfortunate death of George Floyd and just the social, the protests that have been happening throughout the country. Shout out to Houston for 60,000 strong yesterday,
H-time.
and keeping it
Keeping it proper.
Yeah, keeping the main thing.
Yeah.
And so we today wanted to kind of navigate into some waters that I think for some of us may feel uncomfortable. For others of us, it's just like, I don't know what to do. But we wanted to talk today about how do we talk to our children and honestly with one another about race. I don't want to steal all the thunder, but I know for me personally, as a staff, we kind of have a family dynamic. And when you have a relationship with someone, an equity with someone, it allows you to kind of invite yourself into their world. And I will tell you, Pastor Malcolm has been that for me. He's allowed me to walk into his world and just say, I'm ignorant. Can I please ask you some questions? And he's always responded in love and acceptance. And I think, wouldn't you guys agree? I think when we have a mutual understanding and a mutual respect for one another, it allows us to have what we call family chats.
Absolutely.
I mean, what do you think?
No, I think you're spot on, and that's one of the things that with everything we'll share today, you could really drill it down to that one thing. When you're in a position where you can invite people into your world who maybe have a different perspective than you, that's when learning takes place. But if I only click up with people who look like me, talk like me, dress like me, live like me, then there are elements of understanding I'm just not going to have.
Absolutely. And so I think all great discussions start with two things. I think one, a mutual respect and love and respect for one another. And I know the three of us all love and respect one another, some more than others. And all great discussions.
I knew it was going somewhere.
All great discussions are decided with the Lord's Holy Water Chick-fil-A sweet tea, which is funny because Pastor Malcolm doesn't drink it. But I got you some bottled water.
Come through.
I got your boy. Mark, you want some sweet tea?
Man, I don't drink sweet tea.
I know. So really, I bought this for myself.
I'll drink sweet tea. I'll drink sweet tea.
Got your water.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I brought my own cups of ice. I mean, we're making this, man. We're going down right now. I mean, yeah.
It's always got to be. This is the most pleasant surprise I've had on Wednesdays.
I'm not gonna
in
lie.
The last 6-7 weeks.
I'm not gonna lie. During one of our at-home communions, I did look at Courtney one day, and we didn't have any juice during quarantine, and I said, "I got some mango sweet tea in the fridge. I mean, we have to. That's what we'll go with." All right. So let me get my sweet tea poured here. All right. So today's topic: how do we talk? What are you laughing at? This is kind of what everyday life is like.
Unofficial sponsor, sweet tea from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And Sienna sauce. So I think where the best place to start is, Pastor Malcolm, how would you recommend, I mean, as a dad with 4 kids, I've got 3 sons and a daughter, Mark, three awesome boys.
Yeah.
You've got 3 children of your own. How do we initiate a dialogue about race with our kids?
Well, I think the simple answer is there is no one size fits all. You know what I'm saying? What may work for Team Cox may not work for Team Scott. It might work for Team Marshall. And so I think you have to really know your kids. And what we've done, this is just, free 99. What we've done is we make a point to have discussions of this nature around the dinner table because everybody's got to eat. Everybody wants to eat. So we've started leveraging dinner. And I say started, we've been leveraging dinner for conversations, whether it's a time of devotion, time of Bible study. We try to do it around dinner because we know that's one place that everybody will be. And we also know it's an opportunity to bring them in. And so we try to have discussions for our family around the dinner table.
That's good. So let me, I think there's some landmines that I think we should all just acknowledge that sometimes exist. I'm speaking as a white male from middle class, upper class America. You and I have talked many times that my life has looked and felt different than your life has.
Sure.
I mean, and it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't fix that in this moment without us just having open discussions about it. And so we were talking a few minutes ago, if I'm a family of all Caucasian kids, white kids, is it okay for me to sit down and talk with my kids about black kids and brown kids, or should I say African American? And like, what terminology? Because I think,
Yeah.
I know for me, sometimes I'm like, well, I don't want to sound offensive. I mean, what would you recommend?
I would say they are all image bearers of God. And because they are image bearers of God, that blackness or that brownness or that whateverness is actually part of God's design for them. So when you exclude that, you're actually excluding part of how God made them.
Right.
So absolutely, our kids, before they became a little more conscious of the dynamics of race, it was like, that's my brown friend.
Right.
Or, they were like, they not white, they peach. That sort of thing. So absolutely, it affirms part of how God has wired them. And the truth of the matter is, so you talked about landmines. I'm going to give free 99.
All day.
Day.
For the tens of you.
Listen, there is value in, as we're talking about issues of race, there's value in not using the word colorblind. Because when you say, well, God loves all people, and he does. When you say, well, I don't see color, what you're saying is there's an aspect of you that I don't see. You're discounting part of, again, how God made them. And so I think that's an easy thing, is affirm their color. Absolutely. That's how God made us. I mean, if you think about the body of Christ being somewhat of a mosaic, all those different colors represent a beautiful picture when they come together.
Right.
So, yeah.
I know it's funny you say that, because I remember when Eli, my son, we were doing some foster care, and we had a black kid that lived in our home, and I remember him walking up to him one day and putting his arm next to him, and the kid goes, yeah, I'm black. What color are you? And he goes, I'm peach. And I'm like, amen, buddy. Amen. But I think for a lot of, I know for my family, that's at times that's kind of been like, well, what words can we use, can we not use? So with what's going on right now, suppose I have a child that's come to me and said, Dad, why does this exist in the world? How do I, what am I supposed to do about this? I mean, what would be your recommendation, or what would you want me to know as a white dad with white sons? Because I think that's important to say, what would you want me to tell them to say, well, this is where we are as a country?
Sure.
Because I think naturally, we all want to kind of walk into this, and let's be honest, I think for a lot of us, we're wading into muddy waters and we're unsure, and when we're unsure, we're just like, I think the word I read a phrase today is ideology of ignorance. And it's like, well, if, son, there's bad in the world, and we just got to be better than that, rather than calling racism what it is and calling ignorance what it is. And, when we see injustice, calling it out. So, what would be, for you, what would be a conversation that you would say, Tyler, I hope you're having this conversation with your son?
Yeah, I think this is true regardless of the issue. We're talking about race today, but regardless of the issue, and I know you two will affirm this, our desire as leaders is to equip our people to be the primary disciples of their kids. So what that means is you can't give what you don't have. And some of that hesitation that I've seen is people who are unwilling to step into it themselves, but they're trying to walk their children through it. Well, I can't take you across a bridge that I'm not willing to get on the bridge with you. And it's even better if I'm a little bit further ahead of you, so I can kind of help you circumvent some of the craziness. So I would say this really starts with us as parents to be informed, to read. I've got a few resources here that I'll suggest, but at the end of the day, it starts with us.
Cool. What kind of articles would you recommend? And any articles or books that are recommended, we will be sure to put in the comments section. Where's a good place to start? I remember I gave you a book. What's the name of the book? From Martin Luther King.
Oh, his daughter.
Yeah, that his daughter.
His daughter signed it for me. Yeah.
This was something. I'll tell you guys. I just want a transparency moment here because we're all over the page. This is how our discussions typically go because Tyler chases rabbits and worms. That's weird. No,
I don't know.
I chase rabbits.
Okay.
So about a year and a half ago, we were at a conference, Mark and I, where Dr. Bernice King spoke and just talked on how the church can step into social injustice and be the torchbearers for just this idea of reconciliation and honestly just pointing people back to Jesus because the three of us all know we've got the solution, but not everyone wants. We just got to realize it's there. And so I remember being moved to tears during her talk. I don't remember any key phrase, but then I remember going to her and buying a book and asking her to sign it and say to my pastor Malcolm, because I was just like, as a white man from Alabama, I love my family, shout out to everyone in Alabama, but for me, knowing my upbringing and where I come from and living in the South, and look at you and say, my pastor is a black man, 50 years ago, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
And so, if we're trying to be relevant and talking with our children, one, what are some good resources that we could be looking into and reading and just to educate ourselves?
Sure. Well, I'll just give a couple, and I'll start with this one. There's a website, there's an organization called the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, ERLC.com or org. I'm not sure what the ending is, but ERLC. They have a host of really good resources, and not just about this, just how do we engage the culture in a way that's God-honoring, it's affirming of the Imago Dei, and it actually builds into people and not take stuff out of them. So I would say ERLC, but I've got a couple of books that I jotted down. One is, and this is a great book for toddlers. This is I want to give some age-appropriate suggestions. The Skin You Live In by Michael Tyler. That's great for toddlers. For kindergarten age, we've got All the Colors of the Earth by Sheila Hamanica. And then for elementary age, we've got The Colors of Us by Karen Katz. And then I think for us as adults, a really good book I would encourage is Many Ethnicities, One Race by Thabiti Ambwale. He's a pastor from the D.C. area. Yeah. And those are just a few. I can give you countless others, but those would be some really good starting points.
I would say at the adult level, hub students, we expect them to read at an adult level, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and there's conversations, and if you're a student and you're looking around and you're wondering, kind of where to start, I think that this may be an appropriate modeling, and I love that there's resources because I know that there's a lot of patience. I've heard from my friends of color. It is not my responsibility to answer every question you have. Yes. There's a lot of patience there, and I'm thankful for every time Pastor Malcolm has sat with listening ears for us. But there is responsibility to read, and man, I hold students to a pretty high level of responsibility. So, I mean, it's time to start. And some of that happens through conversations. And to be honest with you, our student ministry has really shifted into a season of trying to have those difficult conversations. You know, they say you're not supposed to talk about all these things, these hot button issues in politics and church. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not talking about who do we vote for. These are the things that matter for our nation, and they're issues of justice. And we know that God is a God of justice. And so we absolutely need to be thinking about these things and reading up on it. So absolutely.
So next, I mean, Pastor Malcolm, you said it's great. I mean, it's important that we as parents are, you know, on that bridge before our children, you know, and I think of the idea of I can't teach someone to ride a bike if I don't know how to ride a bike myself.
Right.
You know, and so what are practical things that we can do as a community of believers to foster this and feel comfortable, you know, talking with people from different backgrounds than ourselves, but then also modeling that for our children.
Yeah.
I think do as I say doesn't mean as much if it's not do as I do.
Sure.
Right?
So I'll give some really practical things, and these are things that we've done. One of the things that we as a church love to live by is a statement: life together is gretter than life alone. Hey, represent, baby.
Unintentional.
There you go.
Unintentional.
There you go. Well done. But what that looks like is me gathering my family and say, let's go ride bikes. And we just show up at their house unannounced.
Yep.
Them coming by our house unannounced. Us getting our kids together, creating safe spaces for honest dialogue like this. It's not always easy to enter in, but again, I think a lot of people succumb to paralysis by analysis. They keep kicking it around their head so much that eventually they just completely withdraw. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we know this conversation needs to happen, but this conversation isn't any different than the birds and bee talk. This conversation isn't any different than how do you steward finances well. All of those are things that we have to do so that our kids don't make the same mistakes we made or worse. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so because a lot of that isn't happening, because there are no safe spaces, it's just easier just to completely withdraw. And I'll add this, Tyler, if we don't step into those conversations, we run the risk of our kids thinking like the craziness that's happening right now. We run the risk of them growing up thinking that's normal.
Absolutely. Yeah, or someone's going to tell them what's right or wrong.
Well, that's the other thing. If we as the parents, again, primary disciples, if we don't lead our kids in our convictions and our values, somebody else is going to tell them, and more than likely, they may not even give it to them the right way.
Exactly.
So they're going to embrace something that's completely inconsistent with who we would say we are as people of Christ.
Right. And I will, to all my white friends out there, I want to bring this up because it was something I asked Pastor Malcolm once upon a time. I think, for me personally, I know the analysis, the paralysis by analysis is very common because my wife and I have found ourselves going, man, we really want to introduce. I love the county we live in. I love that we live in Fort Bend County, and my kids have friends from all over the world. I'll never forget the day when a child got out of a car in front of us in the carpool lane, and this sweet little girl had a hijab on, and another little boy got out, and my son was like, oh, that's my buddy Muhammad. They're Muslim. And I'm just like, oh, how cool is it that, that they know who they are and they know their ethnic backgrounds. And, I asked them, I said, tell me about that. And they go, yeah, they're from somewhere in the Middle East. I can't remember the name of the country, but, they talked about, yeah, they are of the religion of Islam, and, we're Christian. And I've told him, like, well, you should come visit my church sometime. I think you'd like it. And so I love that we live in this, community that is a melting pot. But I know for me, there's times where I'm like, I want to reach out to someone who looks different than me, but I don't want it to come across as I'm trying to reach out to you're my token brown friend.
Yeah.
And so, if you could kind of just elaborate on that, because I remember you saying, Tyler, if you reach out and invite that person in, you're going to be shocked at the response you get.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, I would say our church is a great place for that to happen. Like, it's not like you got to go walk up and down your street just to randomly knock on somebody's door and be like, hey,
oh, you're going to be my friend?
Can we be friends? Don't do that because you might get arrested. But if you would just come to church and engage beyond Sunday, if you would come to church and get involved in a life Bible study class, these are all very natural, very organic ways of getting into people's lives. And what you'll find oftentimes is you have more in common than you do different.
Right.
But it takes a willingness to really not succumb to the fear of, what will they say? What will they think? Oh, this is a dumb question. I can tell you, when I've been approached by people who did not know me and there was sincerity in their approach, that's always been received because we're built for that sort of thing. We're built for connection. Forget all the differences. We're built to connect with other image bearers of God. And so man, if it's just taking that first step to say, man, come by the house, let's break bread. Let's get our Acts 2 on, and let's dig in. I want to learn your culture. I was telling some friends the other day, I have become a fan of buttered chicken. That is a dish in Indian culture that I had never been exposed to. But we got some friends here in the church. They didn't turn me on to buttered chicken. That's my joint now.
Some of our Indian friends gave me some food once that they said wasn't spicy.
You sound like you're still bitter.
You know who you are, Ashok Prakash. I'm still struggling with trust issues because of that dinner. I was like, hey, let's have ethnic food night. Yeah. They're like, it ain't spicy. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, you might need to repent. Your heart still seems a little bitter.
Ashok needs to repent for his dishonesty.
Okay, all right.
Bringing it back. So as we continue, I know we had some other questions and they've lost my mind already.
Well, the thing is, they're all on that phone and that phone, so we didn't bring them printed
Well,
out.
let me say this. There was a resource. You talked about different resources. There's a resource that we didn't touch, which I think we just glossed over because this is what we do, but the Bible.
Yeah,
The Bible's a great resource, and I'll tell you something I was thinking about the other day. You talked about Fort Bend County being the most ethnically diverse county in America. I've shared how I've got interracial, biracial nieces and nephews, and they're struggling with some of what they're seeing. I was thinking about this because this isn't this. There's certain texts that often get preached. Psalm 23 is a great one, and Philippians 4:13. Again, no shade at those verses. Great verses of Scripture. However, I don't think I've ever heard a sermon about Numbers chapter 12.
What's going on?
Numbers chapter 12 talks about a man named Moses.
Heard of him.
And how he takes a wife named Zipporah. Zipporah was a woman from Cush. Cush is in Africa. Let's just say it, gentlemen. Moses had a black wife.
Oh, okay.
But that's the kind of, and it's in the text.
Right.
We don't hear that sort of, or Acts 13. I mean, we've talked about this, how Acts 13 lays out the foundation of the leaders of the church, and they were leaders from every socioeconomic status, different ethnicities, different parts of the world. We don't hear that sort of thing. So it's in the text as well. I mean, it's in there if we'll do some digging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I actually recently bought a new Bible that's it's like the Christian Standard Version, but it's called the Biblical Worldview, Biblical Worldview Bible. And so each, at the beginning of each book, it actually gives you contextually where society was, within the greater realm. I'm kind of a history nerd, and so I love reading about the Assyrians and their mighty armies. And so that's something I've picked up on as I've been reading through that. Like, oh, it's really interesting. Like, if we don't ever do the time to dig into God's word and really educate ourselves, we can miss we miss this glaring, beautiful mosaic that God has painted for us because we're trying to focus on this tiny little point. Yeah. So with our kids, I mean, just, with what's been happening socially in the last few days, we've seen on TV and we're talking with our children. I think one of the struggles for me is, how far, what do I tell my kid? I mean, other than, son, we live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
But how do I vocalize to him, this is why this is wrong? And I think I understand why. I mean, obviously I know why it's wrong, but vocalizing to him in a way that he's going to be able to comprehend. But then also as a dad, again, and I'm going to keep saying it, like as a white dad from middle upper class America that can't relate to maybe some experiences that you've had, and you and I have talked about it. How do I raise a son that says he's aware that there are people that maybe are treated differently, and he's able to stand with those individuals?
Yeah. So I think I could probably illustrate an answer in the way of maybe a story. So you've got 4 kids, you've got 3 kids, you've got 3 boys. So I know they're always going at each other. You got 3 boys and they're always going at each other, but your daughter is probably the ringleader. So
yep.
Let's say your daughter decides she wants to slug one of your boys.
Pretty common.
Hattie's not a believer at this point, right?
No.
Okay. So if Hattie was...
Pray for her.
Yeah, we're going to pray for Hattie. Beautiful jewel of a girl. But yeah, we're going to pray for Hattie. If Hattie was to slug, let's say, Judah.
Right.
You as the dad are going to come in and be like, that's unacceptable. That's not what we do. Well, as believers, we understand that real transformation happens when people have a real encounter with Christ.
Right.
But your daughter's not a believer yet.
Right.
You're still trying to teach her, though, right from wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay? If indeed we as the people of God were to position ourselves such that we beckon the God of heaven and earth for heart change, Because though your little girl has not been transformed by the gospel, her heart is being tugged on when you say, no, ma'am, that's unacceptable. And there are consequences for you slugging your brother.
Right.
This may sound super simplistic, and I know there are structures in place, and the Bible even makes mention of the disparity of races and all that. I'm not discounting any of that. What I'm saying is, if people's hearts really get impacted with their own sin, and I'm willing to confess my sin, I'm willing to lament my sin, then I can actually confess it to you. But if I never confess it to myself,
Okay.
all bets are off. Game is over. Like, I'm not saying nothing to you because I haven't been honest with myself.
Right.
I don't want to oversimplify it. It's not a skin issue. It's a sin issue. But more importantly, it's a sin issue of the heart.
Right.
And me acknowledging, man, I've sinned. I've fallen short of God's glory, and I need to make this wrong right. Until people are willing to do that.
I think it's just, as parents, again, as the disciples of our children, it's, helping to expose that and say, here, this. I love how, you said it. Not that we're trying to find a quote and you see it all the time. It's not a skin issue. It's a sin issue. But still being willing to have that conversation with your child and say, this is what happened and this is why this is sin. And we have to be willing to stand up for that and say, that's not what God teaches.
This is wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
This is wrong. You were getting ready to say something, Mark?
Well, I was just thinking about how, it's a sin issue, not a skin issue, and how if we have to in order to confess it, we have to see it, accept it, realize it, be aware of it. And I think there's two levels I'm thinking on. The thing that's tripping up the white people right now, if I can be honest about what I'm seeing in the white people community, is there's a group of people who don't think they're racist, but the words they're saying are ticking people off. I've got friends who have law enforcement officer family friends, right?
Same here.
And they are like, blue lives matter, and I don't understand why it's wrong to say that. All lives matter, and I don't understand why it's wrong to say that. Yeah. And I think we're all trying to get to truth at the same time. But the thing that I love and scares me at the same time is we know that the only solution for this mess that we're in is Jesus.
That's it.
And I'm also, in my darkest moments, I struggle with hopelessness because I'm looking around our world and I'm like, it's a lot of bad news right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of bad news right now. And so the parents' primary disciplers moment for me is I think hope for me to be able to say, man, we're going to put some hope in the next generation. There was a picture we posted on our church page. One of our families took a picture of a little black girl and a little white girl holding hands during worship, and it was just like, in the middle of this mess. Like, how beautiful was that picture? And that's why I have hope in the next generation. But I have to have discipline myself to do the study, to do the research, to do the hard work of relating to my brothers and sisters of color and learning and having compassion. We have to lead with compassion, and maybe humility would be the first thing, because as I'm thinking about what people are getting tripped up on, people don't understand why all lives matter is upsetting to somebody. I've seen lots of white people yesterday say, I'm off Facebook. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm doing something wrong. I saw that like 3 or 4 times yesterday.
Wow.
And people are jumping off Facebook. I've seen lots of people unfriending, block me, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I feel like we need more. I mean,
well, you talked about the hope that you saw in that little girl and those 2 little girls on Sunday. But here's the thing. Even if you're hopeful with that picture, if someone does not inform them of why that is such a big deal, 10 years from now, they could be enemies. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And worse yet, not that they would be enemies, but they would forget there was a time when they didn't even know that stuff existed. So I don't have an issue with you. You're my friend.
Yeah. Well, no, I think for me, that's one of those things, those landmines, as we called it. Like, I know for me as a dad, I so much in my heart, I want to be like, well, we don't see skin color, kids. And I've realized that that's really more hurtful than it is helpful, because I want to be able to celebrate that, my brother, you look different than me, but we serve the same God. And, and I think we have to be willing to have those conversations with our children that are, obviously you want them to be, age appropriate with them. But, the worst thing you can do, and I would encourage you parents watching, the worst thing you could do is continue to wait. People are always asking me, Tyler, how do I how do I raise my children up in a godly home, and how do I model, how do I teach them about Jesus so that they come to a loving relationship? And I said, it is not a talk.
Yeah.
It is a dialogue,
Yeah.
a conversation that is
Sure.
had in moments,
Yep.
each and every day. You're not going to sit your child down in 1 hour and go, this is why you need Jesus.
Right.
But you're going to do it in those small moments when you're washing the dishes and you lean over to your kid and you talk about how Jesus is the living water. And you those moments walking down the street and you're like, look at what God created. And I think if we're able as a culture to say, let's take these moments to celebrate differences. Mm-hmm. Pentecost Sunday was last Sunday.
Yeah.
We take these small moments to celebrate. Man, how cool is this? Anytime I'm with my boys and we see, even just driving around Fort Bend County, we'll just see, like a diversity, like a parade or something going on. There's always different celebrations of cultures, just kind of saying like, isn't it cool how God made us so different, yet we all serve the same God?
Yeah.
And he knew that each and every one of us were going to look different and we're going to sound different and we're going to all these different languages. But he completely understands each and every one of us and the hurts and the troubles that we face. And so I think it's those small moments, just
right.
continually, like, hey, recognize this, son.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, Mark. I want to just address what you said, and then I've got an illustration, and I don't know how much longer we need to go if we need to wrap it up. But you talked about just the blue lives matter, all lives matter.
Yeah.
That's all fair game. Here's an illustration of that point. If we were to leave where we are located right now, and we were to see in the distance smoke coming up from a home on fire, mm-hmm. if we were to go to that place with the intent of helping that house that was on fire, mm-hmm. but we get there, and our view is, well, all houses matter. Mm. This is the one on fire, though.
Right.
And that's where a lot of people of color right now are like the house that's on fire. Yes, those other homes do matter.
Yeah, right.
But here's another parallel to that. Not only does the one on fire matter right now, if this isn't dealt with, at some point, those other homes get consumed by it.
Yep.
Right.
So there's this ripple effect. And so there's value in all those homes. Mm-hmm. But the one that needs attention in this moment is the one that's in flames.
Yeah. And anyone with multiple children knows what that's like. There's days where that one kid just needs a lot more intense fellowship than the other children.
When I think about it too, like to your point, your daughters are more aware of what's going on than my white boys. And me growing up, I can remember living very long before I realized that racism was still a thing.
Yeah. It
took me until I was probably a teenager to realize that racism was still a thing. And black families don't have that luxury. And people of color don't have that luxury, and so the thing that I'm thinking about as far as having that conversation with our kids, you're having that conversation with your kids. I need to have that conversation with my kids, and it's not. I'm not poked and prodded to have it.
Yeah.
Because my kids aren't watching the news and thinking, or they're not living in a world where something's happening to them.
Well, let me affirm you. You want to have that conversation now, because if you will lean into that, as Tyler said, it's not a one-time thing. We're going to talk about this. If you will lean into that now, then when they are 12 and 15 and 18, you'll have laid a groundwork so that can flourish. It's the same thing we tell parents about, talking to your children about sex, about money. If you don't parent them at 4, 5, and 6, it's going to be difficult to do it at 14, 15, and 16.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that conversation, y'all need to have that conversation, and age appropriate, certainly, but it needs to be a part of just what it means for us to be parents.
Yeah. And all that stems from the gospel. All that stems from us as parents, and if we want to have you need to have your quiet conversation. Like parents, like you don't pour from an empty well.
Yeah, man.
And and right now we're having this conversation about Black Lives Matter. Not long ago, we were having conversations about Hispanics and stuff
DACA,
like that, wall building,
walls,
and recently we've been having conversations with our friends from Asia, being told that they're the reason for all of this.
Right.
And so it can be exhausting. I think that's the thing. It can be exhausting, but we as parents need to have that continual connection to God, because we're going to have to address these issues from several layers, but all coming back to that same gravitational point that Jesus is our hope, He's our salvation. But also, here's how you love your neighbor right now, and here's the neighbors that are hurting right now. And
I think one last thing too is something we've talked about. I think when we're talking with our children, especially if you've got older children, And I see some comments. I can't read them. The phone's too far away, but we'll definitely we'll respond to those when we see them. I think if you have an older child, like I have a son that's 11, and so we don't watch a ton of news in the home. I want him to be informed, but I'm also, you want to shelter him and that kind of thing. But he's been aware of. He saw me reading an article today about the peaceful protest in Houston, and he made a comment. He goes, "Why did they emphasize the word peaceful?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, there's been some protests that evolved into more what some would call riots and looting
violence.
and things."
Yeah.
And I think a phrase that we all use a lot, if you've ever had any type of trauma training, sadness and frustration oftentimes expresses itself as mad. In kids ministry, we always say sad is mad.
Yeah.
And so when you see individuals, kind of like you were saying, there's a house that's on fire. We're not saying those other houses don't matter, but you see individuals that are just so sad and heartbroken and don't know where to go. Oftentimes that's going to express itself in madness. Now, do I condone, destruction of property? Oftentimes in the very community where they live? No. But I think I do a disservice to jump on and just be like, man, I can't believe they're doing this. And that just becomes divisive. I think we just have to realize, again, sad is mad.
Yeah.
And accept that and say, how do I meet that person where it is? And so, when I've seen these images of, individuals sitting on a knee and praying together, I'm like, man, there's the hope I want to see. And I think oftentimes, and I'm just going from my experience in working with kids, when you go to a kid and say, I can see you're frustrated. Tell me. And I think in this conversation, I know when I've come to you and just said, can you talk to me? How appreciative you've been when you're just like, thank you, Tyler, for just allowing me.
That acknowledgement, that awareness. I'll take your comment about the trauma competent care training we've been through one step further. If you have endured any sort of trauma but have never worked through it, I'm not gonna speak for all black people because they're not monolithic. Right. But I am gonna make a statement that I think applies to what we're seeing right now, and that is this. Every time someone has their life taken, someone of color has their life taken, some sort of injustice, for the people who have had to deal with that wound gets reopened every single time. So it's trauma it's compounded.
Scar tissue keeps ripping.
Exactly, exactly. Because it never got to heal to begin with, and then you just rip it back open.
Right.
And so, again, I'm with you. Would not encourage, would not justify, would not support destroying people's property. In a lot of instances, people who had nothing to do with some of the protests going on. But I understand it.
Yeah.
I understand it because everybody's got a breaking point.
And and there's, again, it's heartbreaking. But I think the more that we can recognize trauma in each other's lives, I don't want to make this. We're going to be offering trauma competent caregivers a class again here as a church, and I would tell you, if this is something that you want to work through in your heart, I would highly recommend that as a class that you take during one of our mid-link sessions in the fall or spring. But we'll give you more information on that. But I would just say, as much as you can educate yourself to recognize, I see your hurt. I can't relate to your hurt, but I see your hurt.
That's
and,
super
and
valuable.
tell me about it.
Super valuable. Just that awareness and that acknowledgement is huge. Because I think a lot of people of color right now feel as if some of our Anglo brothers and sisters see what's going on, but it's like, bro, you see, I'm sitting here with a broken leg, like, help me. You know what I mean? And the crazy thing is, I know that's not the heart of all of our Anglo brothers and sisters. So there's this weird thing of, I want to help you, but I don't know how. And so hopefully what we've shared today will be helpful. And you know what? Even after this video goes off, if you need to reach out to Tyler or to Mark or to myself, and we can be of any resource, any benefit to you, we're in. We're in. We want to be a part of this solution.
Right. So I think practical steps. I love your sermon in a sentence every time you speak. Don't be afraid to have a conversation with your kids. Let's talk. Let's have a dialogue. If you feel ill-prepared, we want to help you. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but by golly, together we can go before the one who does. 2, I would challenge you, if you have an acquaintance, whether it's an acquaintance, a friend, that it's a black, brown, just someone else, reach out to them.
Yeah.
Ask them, how are you doing? I think that was something I was even talking to you about today. I said, I don't want to reach out to someone and make it feel like, I'm reaching out because of what's going on. And you said, Tyler, that's the furthest from the truth. I think as much as we can invite, to kind of put a bow on it all, I read a really cool, that article I was talking about where I read about the ideology of ignorance. It said, invite people who look different into your home and allow your children to see you laughing with them. I don't want to simplify it, like you said before, but I think if we can model to our children I mean, we're willing to maybe step into some awkward, what intentionally I might initially feel awkward, but I think within a couple of minutes it's not.
Yeah.
So we're willing to say, I'm willing to, hey, tell me about your culture. Let's
Yeah.
eat some spicy Indian food if needed, or
Hey,
or
butter chicken, baby.
butter chicken. Let's step into that and let's embrace the awkwardness.
Yeah.
What's amazing is the next generation isn't going to see it as awkward. It's just going to be normal.
Right.
And I think that's, as parents, I think, and as leaders in our church, that's what we want to see most. So, anything else, gentlemen?
No, I think this is good. I think this is good. To your point, this isn't a one-stop shop, so
Right.
this conversation may need to happen again at some level. And maybe we could do this. If there are specific questions that you have that maybe we could speak to, man, give us that, because we don't want to, think through and prepare stuff that could be helpful, but it's not really speaking to where you are. Bring that. We'd love to let that be some fodder for some good discussion, because we're better together than we are alone. Life together is greater than life alone. So maybe you can help us.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Pastor Malcolm, props. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
I think this needs to become a frequent thing.
He didn't give you.
I don't want to go for
Well,
that.
he's always here. Yeah. The 3 ball. I think we might have to start a new series called Tough Topics and have Pastor Malcolm here, and we can lean on your wisdom and
let's get
understanding.
it, man. The
So,
church needs that. The church needs that.
So next week, sex talk.
Wow!
Sorry.
That boy went there.
I did go there.
You said your mom was watching this, didn't you?
Love you, Mom. Julie Cox.
Oh
Emma
my
Scott.
goodness!
Hey, thank you for tuning in to another edition of WASUP Wednesday. I think we're doing 2 more episodes.
Let's be honest, we don't have a plan.
We have 1 or 2 more episodes before it's over. There are going to be a couple funny episodes left, but like Pastor Malcolm said, if there is any questions you have, we would be happy. I think this has been good for my heart. I'll be honest with you. I think this is I appreciate you, Pastor Malcolm. One is our leader and spiritual leader for me and my family. I appreciate who you are and what you stand for, and just your willingness to share with us and allow a kid from Alabama and Texas and the Valley.
The Valley.
Go Laredo.
What I live.
Allow me to expand my horizons to how I can stand for what the Lord stands for.
Amen.
So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk with you soon. We'll have those books and articles in the comments here in the next few minutes. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Peace.
Outro. Hands up.
H-time.
Oh, I spilled the ice.